Good evening, Adepts. As members of the Temple Unceasing, we dedicate ourselves to the law that preserves and the principles that concern movements that cannot and will not end. Our hours are the Thunderskin, the Velvet, and the Twins. We share our worship with those who live to the beat of life and those who protect or preserve it. This will often include dancers, musicians, and doctors. Clavette is an example of someone who exemplifies art. Fanatically happy and dauntingly optimistic, she wields her joy like a hammer. Another significant individual who represents heart is Count Gottlieb Jannings. As a vivisectionist, his area of study is the structure of bodies, accomplished through live surgery. He is likewise a student of the rhythm of fencing, as experienced by the exile. Jannings says that some lessons can only be written on skin. That might be so, but it might be that Jannings just enjoys his work a little too much. Power in heart allows for us to obfuscate our nature through charm. Not everyone is sympathetic to our aims, but my Tarantellist is popular everywhere. If we have problems with our reputation, they can almost certainly smooth them over. The standards of daylight society cannot apply to us, but perhaps we won't emphasise that point. Perhaps we'll rely on charm and good humour. I have supplied elegant platitudes about the high principles of our organisation. Optimism is the spice which saves. As the principle of preservation, invoking heart will permit us to protect and heal those we choose, and to overcome curses of the creeping breath, dry soul, or fifth eye. Heart is also the principle of storms, which rise for the Thunderskin and subside for the Sister, and as such may be invoked to traverse the seas. A significant proportion of the power of the heart revolves around skin, the skin of a drum, the healing of injuries, or most significantly, the flaying of a body. In the original myth, Marsyas lost a musical contest and was flayed by Apollo, who later regretted it. In this version, Marsyas' skin has a further history. The skin of Marsyas gives oracles and is later smuggled to Phrygia, where the priestesses of Cybele use it for a drumhead. At the opera's climax, the pounding of the drum drives would-be violators of the priestess to suicidal madness. The opera ends with a wistful hymn from the youngest priestess on the beauty of mountain pines. Dr. Aaron Peel, a great hooded prince who abandoned the mother of ants to instead follow the Thunderskin, is notable for having peeled the entirety of his skin in an act of worship. Exile, riddlemonger, Thunderskin devotee, I'd rather say confidant, impeccably dressed, but always in dark clothing so the stains don't show. Darker dressings too at his ankles and his wrists. I won't take a seat. It's kind of you to offer. It would be unkind of me to accept. An irrepressible fact of the world is that no matter how harsh the environment, from the scorching deserts to the frozen tundras, the presence of life is inevitable. As such, heart subverts winter, as every ending will be succeeded by a new beginning. Conversely, it is known that at one time the Thunderskin served the Red Grail. Because of this, we are subverted by the succulent law, for what is the heart but a drum that beats for blood? A pattern noticeable within the heart hours is their connection to Moth. We can see this within the Ring Ewe, the Velvet, and the Witch and Sister. This points to the intrinsic link between the Moth and Heart powers, which both originate from the same god from stone, the Wheel. The Barrow Child describes how the Grail drained the hour called Tide, how the Moth usurped the Wheel from the within, stealing its skin, and how the Forge first eclipsed then shattered flint. Perhaps these are glories, she observes, but then it cannot be that glory is merciful. To explore this further, we should examine the hours that preserve us and move us to their unceasing beat. The Thunderskin is the fourth hour, the heart of the world, the protector who eternally beats. He was originally a name under and lover of the Red Grail. The Velshorn Inscriptions refers to an epic and notably erotic poem describing a rash musician's couplings with and eventual flaying by the Red Mother in both Greek and Phrygian. The intrepid Cal Velshorn found these inscriptions on a temple wall in Halicarnassus, but the same inscription has turned up in a surprising number of other places. Following the Lythamachy, where the gods from stone were almost entirely slain, the Horned Axe was at an enmity with the other hours, for reasons that are fairly understandable. Hieronymus claims that the powers served by the Sisterhood of the Knot made an arrangement. The Thunderskin loved the Yew, and the Grail destroyed him as restitution for the destruction of the Axe's loved ones. Hieronymus's writing becomes incoherent with rage at this point. Perhaps out of jealousy, and almost certainly out of pragmatism, the Red Grail agreed to sacrifice the Thunderskin by flaying his body entirely to appease the Horned Axe. The Thunderskin is firmly tied to the language of Phrygian, with the story of his flaying being described in the same book we can use to learn the language ourselves. Within the Mantis, he leads an eternal dance, where his dancers rhythmically move together to the beat of life. Part of the endless throng are the merry and merciless percussagants, whose assistance we may procure through invoking a degree of heart in a ritual. First the thump, the rattle and cry of the ceremonies it attends in the wood. Now here it is, shouldering its way through the world's skin, like a clawed and ruthless uncle or a headless flapping bear. These headless bears can be seen to ceaselessly dance, even within the waking world. Their movement is persistent to such an extent that even after one is slain and it is skinned, the pelt itself continues to dance to an unheard beat. The Velvet, oftentimes referred to as the Black Flax, is the second hour. She is known to be a prudent and secretive hour. The Glory is a question, and the moth always answers yes. The Black Flax's answer is no, and that is always its answer. What this means is that while the moth will always seek the light, and will always continue towards it, sometimes to its detriment, on the other hand, the Velvet will actively avoid it and opt to remain hidden. There is strength in secrecy, but by risking nothing, some would say that the biggest risk is taken. As one of the hours most empowered through secrets, the Velvet was the one consulted by the great hooded princes when the Timurid Empire threatened their seat in India, and whilst the Velvet lacks in direct power, she helped in the best way she could. Armed with blackmail material from the burrowing secret keeper, the great hooded princes petition the powers of the wood for a second time, and are successful. 1/4 of the Timurid army is devoured by bees, 1/4 drowns themselves, and 1/4 disrobe themselves until nothing remains. As a god from blood, the Velvet originates from sacrifice. One version of this sacrifice involves one Kisling Ripe, a rare example of a name under the Velvet. The Velvet is the hour of secrets, and so very little is known of the Mothlong, Nectarlong, who ascend to immortality under her auspices. But this book, by Kisling's friend, purports to be part cookbook and part manual for immortality. Kisling Ripe is the name usually given to the speechless but never silent cat thing that serves as a name of the Velvet. Kisling Ripe, it seems, enjoys hunting immortals, and the Velvet is very fond of Kisling Ripe. This cat-like creature once stole the sacrifices of 2 members of the Ligeia Club, Medusa and Marionette, as explained in the following. When the Snake Witch killed the stag, Kitling snatched one of its eyes. When the Dry Witch killed the sow, Kitling stole a cup of its blood. Then she took them to the place Mouldywarp lay buried, and she shook out her hair, and she began to dance. The Velvet is present in the Exile's Path. It is known by the Exile that the nameless name, who ascended under the Velvet, is acquainted with Morgan, better known as Madame Matutan. Upon presenting a 5th pentiment to Morgan, she will say the following. I thought I smelt something rare. The blood of the earth, For one of your blood, I think I could arrange passage. Someone there will be glad to see you. As those who are more acquainted with Edge may know, the Exile is an Antaean, meaning they are of the bloodline descending from the flint and the wheel. It is also known that Kisling Ripe's ritual to awaken the Velvet is also referred to as a resurrection. It is also known that in the House of the Moon the wheel still turns. As Christopher Alopoli wrote in the Sunset Diaries, perhaps we all have some thinking to do. The sister and witch, the witch and sister, the twins. They are the 18th and 6th hours, gods from flesh who represent the perfection of union, and may both simultaneously be referred to as a distinct pair as well as a singular being. Their origin is known as the drowning of the twin. When the great drought came, the kings of the west tried to sacrifice the princess and the witch, so they sailed across the sea. When despair took them, they flung themselves into the drowning waters, and so found the Painted River, where they entered the Mantis through the offices of the Red Grail. Nevertheless, the Codex ends with a condemnation of the Grail. As the hour who consumed the tide, many bodies of water are domains of the Grail. The pair spent a lot of time serving the Red Grail, growing in power until their patron eventually grew jealous of her position, hence the condemnation. As the face that is the healer and preserver, the sister is the deity we venerate more fervently. But when noting the twins, it should be taken as a warning that the Legier Club can be counted as an organisation that follows them. The members of this sorority are known as Legians and attracted the attention of the witch and sister for being particularly powerful Alakites, having each committed the crime of the sky. To the twins, this represents the most perfect union between parent and child. The second volume of the Geminiad suggests that these 7 corrupted immortals have been accorded the privileges of names of the witch and sister, or perhaps the sister and witch. It reminds us that the twins unite what is apart, and that the crime of the sky is in some sense a supreme joining. And it speaks at length about the sadness of the 7, the sadness of mothers whose children are forever lost, and far worse than lost. The fact that the Legians are granted the privileges and powers of names, despite not being explicitly dedicated to the twins, speaks a lot to the value this hour places on the symbolism of uniting in any form. The twins are also one of the aviform hours, taking the form of a pair of funeral birds to attend meetings of the roost alongside the other bird hours. Despite being primarily an hour of edge, the Lionsmith is notable for holding the aspect of heart, specifically for the experience his followers have when suffering wounds. As a part of the Lionsmith's eternal rivalry to the Colonel's soldiers are rendered impervious to damage, whilst the Lionsmith's warriors suffer gladly, for they will never fail to heal. The Lionsmith is likewise associated with the creation of life, separate from birth with his forging of monsters. Thank you for attending, Adepts. For more lore, feel free to join the library. Otherwise, go forth and spread the beating words, for nothing can cause us to cease. What drives us?